Like all good infrastructure providers, you've got no idea where the data goes. You just hand it off and it's like, well, not my problem now.
Welcome to Over-Architected with Nick and Holly, where together we're experts in AI and data engineering, but separately, not so much.
This is the podcast where we talk about new features in Databricks and then try to shoehorn them into one architecture to see if it's actually realistic. And here's our new favorite features from the last 60 days. Not 30, because we had Data and AI Summit. And before we get into Summit, yes, very busy time for us. Great experience. Before we go into new features, maybe we should start controversially with some new feature names. Let's just get them out of the way now.
Well, the big one's Genie, although I always thought Genie was just Genie anyways. So I'm comfortable with it, but yes.
So hang on, in the Genie suite of things, we have Genie 1, which is like the minimalist chat interface. We've got Genie Agents, which was Genie Spaces. We have Genie Zero Ops. We have Genie... What was the other one? Genie Code. Genie Code is like the final one, I swear. Maybe it's worth saying that the Genie things have been renamed, kind of like categorize them kind of together. There are two things that have been renamed because the scope has really broadened. I think the old name just kind of like didn't really capture what it did anymore. So vector search is now AI search. It doesn't just do searches with vectors anymore. You can do other types of search as well. So we've still got one more rename, and that is Delta sharing, which is now open sharing. It has massively expanded in scope. So previously with Delta sharing, you could share a Delta table, and that was useful, but it's not enough these days. So now we've got open sharing. So first of all, this has spun out and become its own project within the Linux Foundation. So there's opensharing.io. You can share not only a Delta table, but also an Iceberg table and Parquet files as well. You can share a volume. You can share an agent skill. You can share a model as well. And in beta on Databricks, but has also been put to the community and yet to be incorporated, is the ability to share an agent and also a page as well. So there's a sharing server, and that does like the authentication, the metadata sharing, and like short-lived credential vending. And then the actual flow of the kind of like the bytes goes directly from the storage to the client directly. So the server is never in that data path. So it's much more effective in terms of being able to share the actual data.
I also want to add, you did say open sharing supports agents, but in the spirit of the Genie piece, we support sharing Genie agents specifically too.
The agents thing is slightly different, actually. So everything else, you get some metadata, and then you can directly query the files underneath. But with an agent, actually to treat it a bit more like an endpoint. So you can say, hey, you can query my agent, but then that person can't see anything in terms of like the tooling that they're using or the skills that are being used. So if you want that kind of proxy for someone to be able to query an agent, open sharing is a way that you can do that.
Did I understand you correctly? It's all files underneath? Is that the TLDR?
Yeah, but like everything's a file, the end.
Very Linux. Okay.
Possibly
Continue.
the laziest explanation ever.
No, it's like how computers work.
I have a little demo here for you to see. I have my share that I've gone ahead and created. So I've made a share. In terms of this, I've then added my volume into my share. Previously, I would have only been able to do a table, but I could do any kind of model if I wanted to in here. And if I show you what's in here, I can see that I've got a type volume. I go ahead and I create a recipient. And so I've got this activation link here. Don't ask me why, but Databricks infrastructure forbade me from basically being able to make another account that was eligible for me to be able to do this. It blew my brain. But basically, I've been able to take this and share it. So this then provides me with my credentials that I have. So if I go here and I correctly copy it, how embarrassing. There we go. So I've already gone ahead and like downloaded this credential file. And so if I use using something that is not Databricks, which is technically what my demo is, if I'm using like open source Spark, I can still consume this.
I'd like to point out that said Delta sharing.
Where did it say Delta sharing?
In big letters.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clever Clogs.
Now, can the sharer see everybody who has access, who accesses through the
yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you have the recipient, so I think this goes into system tables, and this will be dependent on you being in the Databricks environment rather than setting up your own server. But in terms of these recipients, then yes, you can create these. And so this authentication is like one-time use. So I have created a recipient called other account. The surprise, this is me on my laptop, is the other account. And you can grant the select on these things, or you can grant kind of I think you can like do it down to the partition level as well. So if you only want to share a partition of data, that's something that you can do. And then you can also monitor. You can also revoke it as well. So if you only want to give access to something for like a few hours, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in a hard spot. It's just I thought that was that people would wonder that. I'm wondering that. Okay, sick.
So in terms of putting this on our diagram, should we maybe have something a little bit Summit themed?
Yes, let's just do the Brickbot architecture.
Which you made. So obviously it's perfect.
No. Yes, actually. You know what? I'll lean in. You said it.
Look, it worked for like 30,000 people. I feel like that's
It did. Well, it ran for 30,000 people. Let's talk about putting open sharing into an architecture. I'm not going to draw the entire Brickbot architecture. That's insane. So let's just say there is an event data provider.
Drawing that, shall I maybe explain to people what Brickbot is if they didn't go to Data and AI Summit?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, that was very inside.
We're well aware that there are more fans of Databricks than the 30,000 people that went to San Francisco this year at Moscone. And whilst you were there was a little app that helped you with all of your sessions and kind of planning the week and all of that kind of jazz. And everyone is very much used to having an agent these days to say, hey, what sessions am I going to? Or what sessions should I go to? But also things like, where can I find coffee? And what are the opening hours? And when can I pick up my pass? And so for 3 years in a row now, Nick has built out Brickbot. And I think it's fair to say that every year, more and more of the infrastructure has been on Databricks. I think first time round, there was definitely a Databricks logo on the architecture diagram, but now I think it's almost exclusively in Databricks. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick.
All the pieces that matter are exclusively now in Databricks, which is really exciting because in previous years, like you said, like it just wasn't like our surface area wasn't quite complete, and so we did have to kind of stitch things together. But this year, all the backend infrastructure that makes it real, the intelligence, the data, the searching and retrieval, the monitoring, the storage of the data, of the actual application, all that's done in Databricks. The only piece that's not in Databricks was the thin client which was exposed to the web. And that's just simply because Databricks apps do not, or so far, and probably for the foreseeable future, are not externally facing. Just because once you do that, then, we spend so much time talking about Unity Catalog, and then it's like somebody opens up an app and gives it to the whole world. And it's like, well, all those permissions you set, remember all those permissions you made? Yeah, none of that matters anymore.
Yeah, bin it.
So this is just for starters. I included Unity Catalog because I feel like we're going to need it at some point anyways.
Yes.
The short version is we have an event data provider. In our case, it was this provider called RainFocus. Really cool piece of software. It holds like everything to do with the summit. They expose an API, and that API is queried using some REST endpoints and goes through DLT, a bunch of transformations, and then stores the data from the event into Databricks itself. And that's these Databricks Delta tables. So that's, there's a bunch of other stuff that happens afterwards. We can fill that in as we go. But that's kind of the starting point, is that we bring in all the data from the event provider on a consistent basis. DLT does some transformations and writes the data to the Delta tables. So open sharing is a recent rename. And so we actually did use Delta sharing internally because it turned out that a lot of people wanted this data. So Brickbot wasn't the only piece of infrastructure that required it. And so we actually had this situation where some teams wanted access, and that we didn't want to be sharing the credentials and doing all this crazy stuff and redoing a bunch of work that, once somebody cleans up the data, why would you just tell somebody else, hey, go redo everything I already did? So we actually did end up sharing it with other infrastructure teams that were developing completely different applications. We shared it directly using Delta sharing. So it was like, one of those awesome moments where you get to use your own product for the actual task that you're doing. So it's like, it wasn't just like a demo. I was like, wait, this is so easy to share. Boom, 2 clicks. So let's just say this is Brickbot workspace. And these are other workspaces. And we did Delta sharing, or no, sorry,
Open sharing.
Sharing. the whole reason for this. In our case, it was really simple. We just said, hey, this is the other workspace, grant on that workspace, and that was it. It was basically the exact same thing you showed.
Do you have an AI feature for me?
Yes, get ready. Deep breath. No, it's really easy. So just to clarify, Genie, period, is the entire AI experience for Databricks. So that's it. That's all you have to know. So Genie means all the intelligence related to Databricks. Specifically, underneath that is...
Hang on.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Is Agent Bricks been renamed to something Genie-ish? No.
I don't know. I'm not responding to that question. Actually, you bring up a good point. Let me address it. Genie is the intelligence that's built into Databricks and has to do with the Databricks platform. Something like Agent Bricks is about creating other agents, and you're using the Databricks platform to do it, but it's for other agents. It has like basically nothing to do with Genie. So I will just say it like that. And I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong.
You can put a Genie space on top of an agent. Just saying.
No, let's stop. Just stop saying that.
Okay. No one likes a pedant. I'll shut up.
No, it's okay. It's true. This is actually the workspace for Brickbot. This is the real thing, the real live workspace. And so first is the Genie 1 experience. Now, like I said, Genie is everything to do with intelligence on Databricks. Genie 1 specifically is your entry point into intelligence with Databricks. Like you can talk to your workspace, which means you can ask questions about the workspace itself. So like what jobs are running and all that kind of infrastructure-y type stuff, but then also semantically inquire, what is this actually about? So actually, I'm going to literally say that. What is this workspace? And it's going to go and it's going to do some thinking. I'm going to hide some of this stuff. Actually, while it's thinking, I'll say this. This is just more specific looks at dashboards, Genie agents, which we'll cover in a moment, apps, domains, so you can separate different things by domains, some schedules, so you can automate some tasks if you want to, and then, of course, customizations and specifically skills, which...
You have no skills. Got it.
Oh. Okay, let's go back to this chat. And see what it came back with. So this workspace does not have explicitly set like, hey, this is what this workspace is anywhere, right? So this actually just has our job that we drew in, that I happened to draw a little piece of in the Excalibur draw, the agents and everything to do with Brickbot. It's actually running live still right now, but there's no real semantic, like, here is what this is. And despite that fact, I'm able to ask, what is this workspace? Get this thought process. It goes through and it finds a bunch of stuff. We get back this workspace centered around Summit 2026, specifically supporting a conference assistant bot called Brickbot 2026. We immediately see, hey, this is the conference data catalog. It includes a bunch of stuff. So our traces, exhibitors, speakers, sessions. We do have some other projects. That's because we have a bunch of other projects that are related. There's some key Genie spaces. Oh no, Genie spaces. All right, so Genie doesn't yet know about the rename. That's okay.
It's not self-aware yet. It's fine.
So we have some spaces or some agents, and we'll take a look at those in a second. And you can see that we've been looking at production trace analytics. That's what we've been. It's even smart. You've been most active in this. But let's take a look specifically now at Genie agents instead of Genie 1. So this was Genie 1. Genie agents are these guys, agents. And you can see these are previously spaces. The final piece, this is the piece de resistance, I guess, is Genie code, right? So we have our, I'm going to pull up some random SQL stuff on my screen right here. On our right-hand side, we have Genie code. And Genie code this is the code assistant. right? So it's not one, it's not Genie agents, it's code. It's gonna work through anything else that I have on this screen. And one of the features that we have in beta that is enabled and makes a lot of sense is this open to full chat. And I haven't really played around with this too much because I still used it kind of on the side, but I'm really excited by this feature because this is a much more natural interface. I know, a lot of people are working in CLIs, barely looking at the code naturally. And so the full screen experience of working with like a coding agent is really important. That's it. That's what I have to say.
Excellent. So yeah, Genie is like the helping you be better at using Databricks, whereas agents is like making stuff for other people. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah.
Sweet. I will say I've been quite impressed with Genie code to the point where it's quite annoying. So I was making a demo basically about like Delta kernel and how like column renaming is difficult without it and blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to talk about Project Hadron that we used to have internally as like a code name, but people kept on spelling it incorrectly and calling it Project Hadron. Am I going to have to bleep that? I don't know. But they spelled it incorrectly. And so I kept on trying to make this demo called like on ID. And it kept on coming back and being like, hi, it looks like you have a typo there. I have fixed this for you. I was like, no, this is part of the joke. Stop it. And yeah, it just kept on being really annoying. I was like, no, I'm trying to put a joke in here.
Well, putting Genie on the architecture is easy, I think.
Maybe a Genie agent is the way for me. We can do like use it for deep research mode. So I think it's going to be in this other workspace. We're going to get our data from open sharing. The way that we're going to use it is we are going to have a Genie agent. What did you say the source was? Like, what kind of questions have people been asking, by the way?
So it had to do with internal tools to follow up on leads, follow up on customer and product requests, things like that.
So I want to say like customer interaction follow-up agent.
Yes, that's a mouthful.
So that's going to be like meetings that happen, customer attendees. And like, did actions go in there as well?
I presume. I guess I don't know.
Okay,
but they asked for the data for tools that were related to sales. So
meetings,
once I share the data, I don't know what they do with it. So maybe bleep that out.
Like all good infrastructure providers, you've got no idea where the data goes. You just hand it off, and it's like, well, not my problem now.
I will add a disclaimer that they were authorized to use this data.
Can I go next with another one?
Yes, please.
With another feature?
Tell us what's good.
Lakeflow Connect. And first of all, I'm well aware that we haven't really done an episode for quite some months. And so in terms of the connectors that have come out, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about like a query-based connector, which is a lot more kind of open-ended. But I do want to talk about a lot of the managed connectors we have. And I've got a big old list, so I'm going to go through them as quickly as I possibly can. HubSpot, Microsoft Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Managed RabbitMQ, don't know what that does. MySQL has integrated CDC pipelines now, Outlook, GitHub, Smartsheet, Google Drive, Square, Wiz, Audit Logs, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Pendo, Zoom Logs, Slack, Access and Integration Logs, Aha, Monday.com, Zoho Books, Workday, SharePoint with structured file and metadata support, Viva Vault, never heard of that before. Sorry, Viva. And also there is a zip connector format now as well, which is pretty sweet. But they're all managed ones. I want to instead talk about the query-based connectors.
Are you sure? Because you just spent a minute saying all that.
I do not have a demo for all those other ones. No, so this is more if you want to, this is like a foreign ingestion. So if you want to have a query, like a specific query on a source directly. And so in terms of the things that you can query, it's things like Oracle or Teradata or SQL Server. It's also MySQL, MariaDB, and Postgres as well. Basically, the way this works is you need a forever increasing ID on a particular source. So whether that's like a timestamp or like a ID that keeps on increasing. If you've got a foreign catalog, you can go through anything that supports Lakehouse Federation for catalogs. So that's a little bit tricky to understand. So I do have a little demo for us. And what I have here is everything in the wrong order.
Have you tried AI?
Okay. So one of the things that is kind of confusing about query-based ingest is that there's not actually a query that's sat there in a notebook running. This is something that you've set up with a pipeline. So this is the YAML file that you would use to be able to set up a pipeline like this if you're using something like Dabs. And I am using Postgres here. And you can see here that in the configuration, I am using a query-based connector. And it's at that point I have to specify what is this ID column that is always constantly increasing. And this is basically what's going to act as my checkpoint. It's always going to see what is new based on like the latest thing that you've done. And then it's going to go ahead and bring that in. Something else that's quite nice is that you can also choose your SCD type as well. So that's not necessarily the same feature, but it's kind of like a nice bolt-on. You can do type 1, type 2, and you can also have your primary keys too. So that is something that's quite nice. And so here is my my ingest that I've got here. So this goes ahead and it sets up a pipeline. It sets up a streaming table that you have here. So there's not really anything to kind of like click on and look at because it's just making a table like that. That's all it's doing. But yeah, I've got a view here in terms of my source that I've got, and that goes ahead and sets up a streaming table. So every time that something happens within Postgres, and I go ahead and I run a query against it, it's always going to check to see like what is the latest version of the thing that I have available in my data. So yeah. Bit of a kind of confusing name because I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to write like select star from a different source and it's just going to automatically work. And that's not quite what it means. It does involve a bit of setup like this as well.
Okay. Got it. I guess this is for Brickbot, where I put myself kind of in the whole effort around Brickbot was to bring everything onto Databricks, and like why would I have a Postgres table somewhere else?
App interactions, maybe? Could you have it as like, what was the last interaction that people did before they rage quit the app, maybe?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay.
So fine, like bounce page metrics.
So there was a Vercel app, like the thin client, and the thin client was instrumented and was writing like other kinds of data elsewhere to its own little Postgres. Let's say it was writing to a Neon Postgres database.
Okay.
And for some reason, it was all hand-rolled and manual, and somebody crazy did it. They didn't just use Google Analytics or something really straightforward. And in that case, because I want that data in my Brickbot workspace, let's just say client analytics. And that would be where I would bring this data in via, how did you name this?
It's a query-based connector.
Lakeflow query.
Lakeflow.
Query-based connector. Sorry. It's Lakeflow, right? Or am I?
Yes. Yeah. It's part of Lakeflow Connect. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Lakeflow Connect?
You can just call it a query-based connector.
Oh my God. No, I'm not changing this. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's basically, I have an external data set, and it's really custom and weird. Therefore, I need a query-based connector.
All right. Should we talk about an AI feature?
Let's talk about Omnigent.
Yes.
So this was definitely my favorite announcement from Data and AI Summit. And Omnigent is an open source project, and we're calling it a meta harness. And why a meta harness? Because a lot of different groups, so like leading foundation model labs, there's a lot of different kind of agents, OpenClaw, all this kind of stuff. And they are essentially harnesses. And a harness is just a wrapper around a model call. Right. So it's just like, here's my model, here's a bunch of tools, here's the message. And in a nutshell, that is a harness. But harnesses have a lot of specific configurations and things that are custom to kind of their own little world. So it's these little ecosystems. And the challenge was I think everybody faced this, but at Databricks, we also faced this, of course. which is that you want to use a lot of different agents. You want to be trying a lot of different things. It's still very early. There's not one best way to do anything. So a very natural pattern that's emerged is not only to use different LLMs, but to actually use different harnesses. And so Omnigent is this new layer that sits on top of all this, right? And so you think about each one of your harnesses, you have the layer on top, which is this meta harness called Omnigent, and it allows you to provide one single interface to all these harnesses. So we're in our Databricks workspace, and I'm just going to quickly show the hosted version of Omnigent. So it's just /Omnigent on whatever workspace you're in. You do have to go into the betas, into the preview section of the settings, and enable this for this to appear. And this allows you to do chats. It's already pre-configured with like AI Gateway and all the models that we support. So you can see we support all these harnesses, so Claude Code, Codex, and Pi right now, at least the version that's deployed and managed by Databricks. You can select the different models within the different harnesses, and because hey, let's do some work. Before I hit enter, you can notice here that I am going to run this actually in a Databricks sandbox, which is also a new feature. So Databricks sandbox means it's completely isolated compute.
Can you connect to MCP servers that are available through this Databricks workspace as well?
Let's give it a try. So MCPs.
Yeah. Okay, sweet.
There you go. So turn on Databricks managed MCP service this session should use. So if you go to Slack, I'm not gonna authorize this, but if I do, then this session will actually have access to Slack. So the feature I want to show is actually policies. Right. So if you go to this information button up here, you can see I don't have any policies added right now, but you can click plus and add all kinds of policies that live on top of this session. So these are a bunch of built-in policies that you can do. Mm-hmm. But policies can be extended, and their API is actually very similar to stateful streaming, since the input is essentially a stream of messages, and the hook for the policy gets called every message that you send, and then it can do arbitrary things. And why I call back to stateful streaming is because it's stateful. It's not a random hook that just runs every time you send a message. It keeps track for the lifetime of the session. So what I did is I will make this bigger. So there is a URL for how to make custom policies. So I said, hey, can you please look at this custom policy and register a new policy on our existing Omnigent server, right? That checks the last 3 messages, and if they're all the same, stop playing games and refuse to answer. So right, that's a good policy. I just wanted to demonstrate. I'm just going to scroll down to where it completed. I just wanted to demonstrate the utility of having a stateful like session watcher. There was actually another blog came out from Matei, and that blog showed how they prevented attacks using this feature. So like it's somewhat easy to prevent attacks that are just single messages, but people can compose. You can compose kind of over the course of a session, kind of pollute it, and then suddenly a policy will no longer be good enough. But because the policies are on the entire session and stateful, you can actually catch those things. And here is going to be where this policy is. And as you can see, it wrote this piece of code, this policy, and essentially it's deny 3 identical user messages. And, whatever, this is just the logic that it used. And then finally, if you reach 3, then say, hey, deny, basically stop responding. Right. And then it attached this policy to, it actually attached it. You can see right here, registered and configured as a server-wide policy by default. So I'm going to start a session, and I want to point out that the policy we made is on, it's registered on the Omnigent server. But where this session will actually run is a MacBook Pro. It's not a server, right? So the session is going to run somewhere else. And I'm going to say, hi. And it's going to use 5.6 Sol. I'm going to say hi again. And it's going to continue to be very nice to me and say, hey, how can I help? And then I'm going to do it a 3rd time. And you're actually going to see nothing. And so, but you can see it actually stopped, right? So it didn't work. It did not continue to respond. And you can see here my first high, my second high, and then finally, you can see this is the raw codex session that's running on the MacBook itself. And it did not send that last third one because the policy caught that third message, said absolutely not,
okay,
and stopped.
So I have absolutely no idea how to put this on our diagram. So help is appreciated.
Honestly, it's like a development tool, right? I don't know if it's like
more
on the architecture. I think you could get away with a little circle on the top right. Be like, Omnigent.
All right. So there we go. One of the big announcements that we had at Data and AI Summit was this real unification between Iceberg and Delta to the point where you shouldn't really have to care too much about it. Even Ryan Blue got on stage and was like, you shouldn't have to care about Iceberg. I couldn't agree more. It is one of those things where it's like everyone's trying to solve a similar problem with these different formats. And now we are really at there where we've got parity. So we've got Iceberg v3 and Delta v4. And so that means that in Databricks, we have a few things that you weren't able to do until now. So things like deletion vectors and row lineage and variant and geospatial types that are like fairly recent in terms of the features that have been implemented. We also have Delta tables. They now have Parquet v2 underneath. So that'll give you better compression, which means that you'll end up with smaller files, which means you'll end up with faster scans, and you'll end up with more aggressive file skipping. If you upgrade, you do need to do a reorg statement. I'll show you in a bit of a demo. And you can mix and match the Parquet files within that as well. So you can have V1 and V2 within the same Delta table, which is fine. But do keep an eye out for all open source integrations. They've not all upgraded yet. And one final thing that we've got in terms of like file format unification, you can now convert partition tables to liquid clustering tables as well. So I'm well aware that's a bit of a smorgasbord in terms of features that are available. So I have some examples here. So if I want to make a managed Iceberg table, it just create table using Iceberg. So if I go ahead and I make this, and is this going to start? Is this going to behave? There we go. I insert some data. Obviously, I can select star from it just like I would anything else. And then if I do a describe extended, I should be able to see that I have some provider. Yeah, I've got provider Iceberg in here as well. I think once upon a time there was a bit of critique about managed tables, and it's like, oh, it's really locked away and you can't access it. There are quite a few ways that you can access managed Iceberg tables outside of Unity Catalog as well. And I will say that managed tables tend to be where you get all the goodies in terms of the features that you want. So things like predictive optimization, so you don't really have to think about it. That's a great feature to be able to have there. And there's some things that I'm going to talk about later as well that require managed tables too. So that's just managed Iceberg tables. Again, foreign tables are available too. In terms of upgrading a Delta table to Parquet, so I have my table that I've got here. I've called it Parquet v2 demo. And where is this in my table? Anyway, but to be able to upgrade it, it's an alter table statement to change the table properties, and then it's also a reorg table as well. So let's go ahead and run these very simple little statements to be able to run. Do. Lovely, and that's gone ahead and done that. And so if I have a look at my table properties, hopefully, oh yeah, sorry, literally here, Delta Parquet format version 2.12, whereas previously it didn't show it. Okay, no wonder I couldn't find it earlier. Okay, fine. But yeah, it's very simple to do. You might get some performance gains from this as well. And again, you can mix and match with your Parquet versions as well. And then finally, again, these are all little tiny things that we've got here. I've got my partitioned table that I have here, and I can just go ahead and do alter table, replace partitioned with cluster by auto. This has been a blocker for a lot of people. They've had to choose between one or the other, and now they can just run it as one statement to be able to replace it. So there we go. Fairly straightforward. I know that's not anything, incredibly groundbreaking in terms of syntax, but these are features that people have been asking for a while now, and hopefully should be able to help with all that kind of unification of data complexities between Delta and Iceberg.
So the two that stand out for me are the automatic changing or migrating from partition by to auto or liquid. I really like that. And then just generally managed Iceberg tables. All right. Well, in that case, I am just going to say that we have a Iceberg table. One moment while I do that. big.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad you're getting into putting more icons on here. Okay, cool. Yeah. Do you have a new AI feature for me?
All right. Let's talk about agent memory. So memory is, just additional context that's outside of your actual LLM context. And agent memory is, at least in the kind of scheme of Databricks, can be implemented two different ways. One is a self-managed agent memory, which is hosted on Lakebase and managed by you via Lakebase. So you can kind of
Sorry, I don't understand what memory is, and I feel like you're explaining memory by saying it's memory.
Like I don't know. What's the definition of memory? It's the same as the memory in your brain.
Wait, so is it like stuff that like it's writing down as part of like making an artifact, or is it more?
It's arbitrary. It's literally whatever you want it to be.
All right then. So if I'm like, hey, make this diagram, and then it does, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, can you find that diagram again? It'll go and get it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about managed agent memory. So managed agent memory, right, gives you a new Unity catalog entry called a memory store, right? And you run it, and you literally just run this command, create memory store, and that creates a new schema entry or a new memory store in Unity catalog. And it also exposes a set of APIs for you that allow you to actually query it, right? So you can create a memory, which is like just store a piece of text, like a string, right? You can list your memories, you can delete memories, kind of the expected CRUD type of approaches to it. And I think this is obviously now a very common thing to get started with managed memory. The best way is to take a skill and put it into Claude. I wanted to show how I added this to Brickbot. All right, so let's show Brickbot. And as you can see here, I'm authorized as Nick. And previously, what we had is, like this is during the actual conference, is I could ask it, hey, what have we talked about before? And this was implemented manually via a tool call called Recall Past Conversation. And it's going to pull up our chat history using this tool call, which goes and hits Lakebase. The Lakebase actually has all the things, like it literally has the entire session's history, and then it returns it. Right. So here you've talked, there's a lot of history. Here's all the messages we've traded. Now, the agent memory store, what it allows me to do is implement something like, let's say preferences or like a profile, something to do with me, right? So if I want to say like, hey, my favorite feature from Databricks was Omnigent, don't forget, and got it. Let me save that for next time. And you can see that it saved this using a Remember About Me tool. Now, how did this come about? Well, this came about pretty simply. What I did was I took this skill for getting started with managed memory. I literally added it to my Claude Code session. And I mean, it's in the docs. Our document, like in this new world, it's funny that this is the instruction set. It's like, add this thing and say add, and then let the agent do the work. But of course, you have to review it once it's done. But it really is that simple. You don't have to be worrying about permissions or who can see it or anything like that. It's kind of out of the box. For us, it was a little bit different because, again, like we ran that public app, a public-facing application. So it's a little bit different, but it's still very easy to pass just the user ID essentially and scope everything. So in a new tab, I can do this. And now this is a completely different session. Cool. Based on what I've saved about you, Omnigent was your favorite feature from 2026. So the way that that's implemented is actually that it injects it into the turn result out of the box. So it doesn't have to go and retrieve it, but that's kind of in the weeds of how you want to implement it. It's completely managed. So definitely give it a try. You will have to enable it in the beta page of Databricks.
Sorry, is the memory store more for agents that you are creating, or like your experience with Genie?
Has nothing to do with Genie. It's for agents
Right,
that you're
okay.
it's for agents that you're creating.
Oh, okay. Right, okay, fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry.
Whether those agents are like chatbots, like Brickbot, or the agents could be like autonomous agents.
Am I allowed to be really cheeky and just highlight that this could be a feature within Brickbot?
Well, I guess technically it is.
Which technically it is. I know you've got like event data provider here. I feel like you've just like, this is the Brickbot workspace, but this is like the analytics data, isn't it, DLT?
Yeah. So from the Vercel app, you could actually do an arrow into the Brickbot workspace and drag it into a box within the Brickbot workspace that just says agent memory store. And that would managed agent memory, you could say.
Managed agent memory. I feel like that's the laziest thing I've ever added to one of our diagrams before, and I'm quite happy for it, you know? So I have another feature that I want to talk about, and that was something that was announced at Data and IO Summit, and that is a Lakehouse real-time, or Lakehouse RT. It is spelled kind of a funny way. And basically, this is our new query engine. For a while now, the writing's been on the wall of like why Spark is a little bit slow, and it's all to do with that JVM, the Java virtual machine that sits there, and that introduces a lot of overhead, which is not great. But the good thing is at Databricks, we have been making query engines for about 15 years now. And guess what? We are really good at it, and we've got loads of data on how to optimize a query engine. And so we're able to take that, we're able to do some really smart machine learning from it to understand what the best patterns are. And then that goes into a new query engine that doesn't rely as much on that JVM. That's the bones of it is still there. Like you've still got an optimizer. There are still some things that like you use for Photon and having some things vectorized, but ultimately it is lightning fast. Now at the moment, this is designed for reading data. It's not necessarily ETL. What I have here is I have a new type of warehouse. It's called a Raiden warehouse. So one of our founders is called Reynolds, and it's meant to be Reynolds' dream engine. And this was the plan so that basically the project never got canned because they named it after a founder. So I'm just going to run select one. Oh, wow. That is really quick. Just to make sure that it's connected and up and running. And I've just got a table here and I'm going to do a select start from this. And I can see that querying this table returned it in 0.62 seconds, which is much faster than you would have. Like there was no cache here. It was a brand new session. So nothing, no silliness coming up from that. But what I can do is I can say, hey, can you make this more complicated for my demo? Let's accept this and let's run this. And hopefully, there we go. So again, there has been some caching that's gone on here. But in terms of what we've been able to do, we've been able to do a bit of modification as well and some ordering as well across all of our 700 rows. And that took 0.25 seconds to be able to run. So for me, not only is the engineering under this incredibly impressive, but also, if you are doing anything with having your agent query some data underneath, like that kind of 3-second delay, you feel that as an end user, and that is just so slow. Any questions, Nick?
Questions? No.
Okay. Comments?
Just excitement. I mean,
okay.
This
you
is
look it.
no. It's kind of like it's a little overwhelming because I remember when we introduced Delta, right? And so it's been like the idea to unify OLAP and OLTP has been like it's always been the holy grail. We're not there yet, but like we're getting really close. We're inching very, very close to that dream.
You're not confusing this with LTAP.
What?
So LTAP is the unification between OLTP and OLAP.
Right. Is that not what you
This
just demonstrated? Where was the data?
No, this was Raiden. This is just like super fast query engine.
Oh, but it's
Which is
related.
different.
They're not. I don't see them as separate things. I mean, sure.
They are not
so
the
it's
same thing.
faster DB SQL.
Yeah, they are. It's a faster DB SQL. Yeah.
Damn it. Okay. Well, that's what I get.
That's a very common misconception. So, in terms of, there's two broad new features that have come out, which close one eye squint with the other. They look like they do similar things, but it's not quite the same thing. So, we've got Raiden, which is basically a new super speedy DB SQL warehouse. There's a lot of pedigree in terms of how was this created and why is it so clever, and underneath, like, there's a lot of engineering stuff. But basically, if you've been in the scenario where you've been using a dashboard and it's too slow to render your data, no matter how much you try and like cache it or do all the kind of tricks and things that you've read about online, it's still a bit too slow. And also, if you are using agents that are querying your Lakehouse data, so this is just normal managed table data that's in Delta or Iceberg. Lakehouse real time is what's going to be able to query from that super, super quickly. You shouldn't have to worry about the size of the data either to be able to query that data. Now, it doesn't write anything yet. And that for me is the big distinction. You can read, but you're not really doing ETL with it yet. Separate from that, we have to acknowledge that transactional databases exist. Now, these are normally things that sit behind an app, like we've got Brickbot here. So if you've got your Vercel app and that is doing some things and that is writing to Lakebase and manage Postgres. This time last year, you would have had to use a CDC pipeline to be able to take that data from Lakebase to put it into your Lakehouse so that you could have that analytics data. Now, the CDC pipeline, like, they're fine. I would describe them as a necessary evil. You know, you could have the managed one with Databricks, but you would always end up with like a bit of a delay. If you were really lucky and you had something that was always on, then maybe be like 20, 30 seconds. But if you didn't want to pay for always on compute, then you'd have to wait until the next time it kicked off and refreshed. So if you have some kind of agent that requires like the analytics to happen based on what's happened in your transactional data, you would have always had a delay, and that wouldn't have been possible. The upshot with LTAP, which is the new version of doing this, is the ability, because we've been able to separate storage and compute, actually we're able to use the storage for Postgres now for Lakebase and to be able to have that as Delta or Iceberg. So you can now read from that. Now, there is the way that Postgres works. There's like the page server and safekeeper. There's a bunch of like detail there in terms of how those then write to the storage underneath. And there's always a little bit of a delay. You've got to like wait for like quorum amongst all of the writers. There's like a write ahead log as well. So there is always going to be a little bit of delay in terms of the storage. And where Raiden comes in is if you want to read quickly from that analytics data and from the stuff that's in Lakebase, that's where you also need it as well. Did that clarify things?
Yeah, that was great. That should just be the thing. We can cut everything else. I'm going to add it to our diagram.
Okay.
And background green Raiden.
That is not the correct name for it. It's Lakehouse RT.
Lakehouse RT.
And it has 2 double forward slashes in it.
Oh, I was wondering why people were doing that. I was like, where did this? Okay. Yeah. No, I legitimately I thought people, I didn't even think about it. I did notice. Is that the correct one?
Yes.
I have a suspicion that this will be renamed. Can I write LTAP somewhere or no?
Yeah, but you're not, it's all right. But you're not querying Lakebase. You're querying like, you could query your Iceberg data. Your Delta tables. There we go.
There we go. Do this too.
Not today. Not today.
If you have the preview. What do you mean not today? We just stood on stage and announced it to like 30,000 people. Give me a break.
Yeah, we announced the bleeding edge. Not that it's available to everyone right now.
Reynolds stood on stage and elucidated for 30 minutes about how this works. So I'm allowed to draw an arrow.
Okay, fine. All right, then fine. Well, you've spent some time insulting my feature. Do you want to talk about your
I deleted it. You can cut all that out. I didn't insult your feature. I love your feature. This is my favorite feature. I wish I got to introduce it. I have only one more thing to say, which is AI features, which is, as usual, we have a host of new models we've added a host of new models to our foundation model API. I'm sure by the time this goes live, we'll add even more, but we have the latest Sonnet 5 from Anthropic. We have latest Google Gemini models. I'm reading them off a page right now because I don't even know all of them. 3.1 Flash Image, 3 Pro Image. We have the latest 5.6 suite of models from OpenAI. So Sol, Terra, and Luna 5.6. Very awesome. It's my model of choice.
All right. So I have started typing these here next to our little Omnigent guy. It was Sonnet 5. I've got a Gemini 3.1 Flash
Image.
And then OpenAI, Sol, Terra, Luna, and 5.6, and Fable 5, big question mark.
Yes. I mean, it was definitely on the platform at some point. I just don't know.
And then it got ripped out from us. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. And that is always a great reason why you need to have interoperability between all of these things. And I've got one final feature for you. Managed disaster recovery is something that is available now in public preview. I don't have a demo for this. I'm really sorry, Nick, because it's quite a faff to set up.
Just unplug it. Unplug the data center.
So this is a Databricks managed cross-region replication of your workspace and Unity catalog, and it is a one-click failover from the account console. So if up until now you've been trying to do this yourself with kind of like deep clones and Terraform and all of that kind of stuff, if you've ever tried to do this yourself, you will know that it is an absolute nightmare to try and get like complete coverage for everything that you need. And then Databricks does something audacious like, I don't know, updates a bunch of features, and suddenly all of your Terraform scripts have to change and adapt to that as well. So now we have a Databricks managed one, which is amazing. In terms of things that are in scope, so it is a Unity catalog, metadata, managed tables, metadata for external tables and volumes. It includes your views, your functions, all of your permission grants, and it all has all of your workspace assets as well. So things like notebooks and jobs and warehouses and blah, 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 blah. Something that's really neat about this is that the workspace asset IDs are preserved across your regions. So like the workspace ID will stay the same. So those URLs will stay the same. So it is non-active active deployment. So it's not like they're both running there at the same time. It is a failover, or like with a one-click by design. It is not cross-cloud yet. So if you're on like Azure and you want to go to AWS, that's not available yet. I'm not saying it won't be available in future, but today it is not. There is no ability to do like fine-grained replication control. I think you could do some config about like the workspaces themselves, but in terms of like, oh, I want like this table to move over, but not this one. I don't think there's anything there for that at the moment. And again, it is one click. So that means that it's not going to do your cluster or warehouse starts, and it's also not going to resume your jobs as well. And that is by design. And in terms of qualifying for it as well, you will need to be on the enterprise plan. This is a mission critical add-on as well. And something that I don't have in my notes that is probably worth mentioning, and that is there is a cost associated with it because it's quite expensive from like our side to run if we're constantly running all that replication to other areas, and to make sure that we've got that backup available for you as well. So there is a price uplift on that. That's true for all like managed disaster recovery things. I think that's fair. I know people are going to want to ask for more. There will be more that comes in the future as well.
Amazing.
So I think there's a very obvious way that we can add this to our diagram, Nick.
Blessed recently not to have to worry about such things. But I remember when I was in the field that this was a huge pain point. So I'm very glad to see this. Were you being sarcastic when you said there was an obvious way, or am I just dumb?
It just put a big square around it and be like, manage DR, done.
Here's what I'm going to do. And then
you're just laughing to yourself. Do I need to scroll? And is this it?
Disaster.
You know what? This is a big deviation from our square around everything. Call it a feature. So you know what? I don't hate it. I like it. Thank you very much, Nick. All right. So that is everything from me. Do you have any more features?
No more features.
Oh, but you do, Nick. But you do. We have not been recording for a good few months now, which means there are so many features that came out that we weren't able to talk about. I'm giving you the rapid fire section, which you have not looked at until now. Actually, for the first time ever, I think I'm actually going to share my show notes on the screen so people could see just how crazy this giant wall of text is.
Okay, so you would like me to read all this?
Again, like this is, I cut out a lot of stuff in here as well. How many features do you think? I feel like you can ignore some of them in terms of like the maybe
if you mean to say that I not only have to read them, but I have to simultaneously discern which are worth reading, then
okay. Well, my challenge to you is: what is the best way to communicate to everyone that like all of this stuff has happened?
The best way is this: if you're watching, screenshot, print it out, put it under your pillow, and you'll remember it in the morning.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. See you next month.
Excellent. We are way past Nick's nap time, so we're going to have to call it a day here. What do you think of our architecture? What do you think of these features that we spoke about this month? Do you think you'll be using any of them? Were there any of the features that you heard about announced that you would like us to talk about next month? And until then, thank you so much for joining. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you next month. Bye, bye, bye. Beautiful.